Yo, what's up everybody? My name is Trinity and welcome back to the Second Street Marvel for a comic book review. And today I'm going to be doing an indie comic book review. I've got this fat stack of comics that I haven't yet got reviewed. I don't want to keep you waiting much longer because this is going to be a lot of them, make for a fairly long video. Recently I was on vacation and I just didn't get a chance to review a whole lot of these books, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I will make sure that I leave, I'll try to leave as many timestamps as I can down at the bottom in the description. First I'll go ahead and start off here with this Mountainhead issue number 3 by IDW Comics. This book is being written by John Lees. The art here is done by, oh yeah, let's go ahead and open this up. The story is by John Lees, art by Ryan Lee, colors by Doug Garbark, letters Sean Lee, and the editor is Bobby Kernrow. I'll go ahead and show you the inside there. You can see some of those names of the people that are involved in making this book. And I'll go ahead and show you a little bit more of the art going on in this book as well, kind of what you can expect out of it. Now this book, Mountainhead, what's going on in this story is there was this young man who the story pretty much revolves around. He was kidnapped when he was a child by this guy who was breaking into people's homes and things like that. And just going in, breaking in, and stealing stuff throughout the house as well. He ended up stealing a child. And, he took this kid and pretty much raised him for nearly like 10 years almost. And so, in issue number 1, the kid was discovered. The guy had got caught by the cops. He was raising him as his son. So the son always saw him as his father and really didn't know no different. And over the first 2 issues, it was kind of that, where the first issue we get revealed that it wasn't really his father, and then second issue he goes to live with the family that is actually his family, and he finds that his real mother and father had actually adopted a kid as well, and I think they had another child as well that was his actual brother. I could be wrong, brother, sister. I haven't read the first 2 issues, but he definitely does have a sister in this book. And this book right here, it's more of a horror series, a horror story. It's very good. The first 2 issues seemed a little bit slow going on the pacing and everything, just kind of building up this world and introducing us to these characters and exactly what's going on here. Mountainhead refers to something that is spoke about in the first book as to when people get in those high elevations for a while. They're saying that you kind of go crazy, a little bit stir crazy or whatnot, being disconnected from civilization, and you start to get Mountainhead. Well, this issue number 3, the first 2 issues didn't really give us a whole lot of horror stuff. This issue number 3 really ramps things up, and I gotta tell you, the first 2 issues were good. Issue number 3 is definitely the best out of the Mountainhead issues. One I think you guys would definitely like if you're into a horror story. The art may not be for everybody. It seems I don't know, but it seems to match the story really well, and that's being published on IDW Comics. That was Mountainhead issue number 3. The next one I'm going to talk about here is Blade Runner 2019, being published by Titan Comics, and go ahead and take a look at that beautiful cover there. This was actually concept art from the original Blade Runner movie that came out in 1982 with the concept art done by the late, great Sid Mead, who did just pass away just maybe about a month ago now. This one is being written by Michael Green and Mike Johnson, with art by Andres Guinaldo, colors by Mark Lesko, and lettered by the hardworking Jim Campbell. I will go ahead and show you that cover right there. And the art in this book, it's pretty nice, pretty polished. I have no real complaints about the art or anything in this book. I'll go ahead and show you a little bit more of that there. Sorry for the glare if there is any, trying to avoid that as much as possible. But basically, this is following the story of this detective Ashina. God, what is her? Ashina. They're calling her Detective Ash, but her name is Anna Ashina, and she is basically one of the first Blade Runners that was ever recruited into the Blade Runner program, where they go around hunting these cybernetically enhanced people that basically aren't approved by the government. If you know the Blade Runner story, you probably know a little bit more about that. Now the first 4 issues were really good. I did like the first 4 issues. This issue number 5 is it's the start of the second story arc. it takes place. I want to say, God, what was it, about 5 to 7 years in the future from 2019, when this original story arc started off was in 2019, and they launched forward 5 years, and that's kind of what we learn here, where we see Detective Ash has gone. Has aged through these 5 years, and we see that she's kind of become, I guess, a victim to her conditions that she had that were set forth in those first few issues. But she was out on this mission. She had a job where she was hired to locate this rich business tycoon's wife and daughter. Well, it turns out the wife was actually she was she was a replicant. So the replicant had run off with his daughter, and he was trying to get his daughter. And that's what we find here is fast forward. I think it's 5 years later, where she has the man's daughter, and has her under protection because she don't believe that the father had good intentions once he got his daughter back. I thought it was a pretty good story. This issue number 5 seemed to be a little bit slower paced, but still kind of fills you in on exactly what's going on here in this world. I can't wait to read issue number 6 of that. Again, that's being published by Titan Comics. That was Blade Runner 2019. A very good book. And if you're into cyberpunk, you'd probably definitely like this series. The next one I want to talk here is on Aftershock Comics, and that's You Are Obsolete, issue number 5. And I believe this does completely wrap up this little story here in You Are Obsolete, being published by Aftershock Comics. The Matthew Klickstein is the writer and creator. Evgeny Bornyakov is the artist. Pipa Boland, Francesca Citarelli, and Juancho Velez are the colorists. Simon Boland is the letterer, and Andy Clark with Jose Villarrubia is the cover artist. And again, I'll go ahead and show you that cover there, and I'll show you a little bit what you can expect out of some of the art here in the book as well. And what's been going on in this story is this movie, or not this movie, but this book is kind of about technology and cancel culture, where there's this reporter who had been caught in a scandal. She had pretty much gotten canceled out there in modern society. How things kind of go. You do something bad and everybody wants you to get fired and lose your job and destroy your life because you get caught in one little scandal. It makes you the worst person in the world. Well, that's kind of what's going on here. But she got called to this island with to write the story about this island and these kids and exactly what they were doing. They were utilizing technology, and what it has to do with is they were using this technology because basically once you hit the age of 40 years old, they're saying you basically slip into obsolescence. And these kids had made this app that they used to interact with and communicate through. And that's kind of what we get a lot of in this story. And it's been really kind of creepy, just kind of more thrillerish, a little bit of horror. I wouldn't say it's so horror as in gory, just maybe like maybe more like a psychological thriller here than anything. But this was kind of the culmination of this story, and I'm gonna have to go back and read all 5 of these issues together and put it all together and bring you guys a better review on it, because this issue number 5, after I think it's been a good month or so easily since the last one come out. I kind of felt like I was missing a little bit something, like there was a little bit that just that I kind of missed in the previous issues or may have forgotten about. But again, that was You Are Obsolete, issue number 5 on Aftershock Comics, who is one of my more favorite indie comic book creators out there, comic book publishers out there, I guess. But other than that, I've really enjoyed the story overall. And again, that was You Are Obsolete. Next one I'm going to talk about here is Vampire State Building, issue number 3. This is on Blaze Comics, and this was actually done by the same artist who did the Walking Dead series. And this one right here has been very interesting. I've actually quite enjoyed it. I'm not really into like the whole zombie vampire world and stuff right there. You can go ahead and take a look at some of this art. But this one is actually very good. What's happened here, and I believe this is only a four issue miniseries as well. And they may have other story arcs planned, but I think this first one is only going to be 4 issues. And what we've learned throughout the story is there's this guy, the main character, who was getting ready to be deployed. He had joined, the army or some branch of the armed forces, and he was getting together with his friends at the Empire State Building just to kind of have a, get together and have a, like, not necessarily a going away party, but just kind of there hang out with his friends. Well, in the meantime, they ended up, what happened was there was a construction crew working on the Empire State Building, and they had found this wall and this door, and they cracked open this doorway, and it released this monster, if you will, this vampire, and just like these spirits. And what had happened is there was a whole bunch of homeless people and everything on the streets that had then stormed the Empire State Building, and the Empire State Building got put on lockdown, and the vampires basically made their way from the bottom floor, and they're working their way up to the top to basically they're killing all the people that were there, and essentially turning them into vampires. And this is the story of this particular guy and his girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, love interest, where it looks like he had some relations with maybe one of his best friends' girlfriends as well. I don't really know. That didn't really come out into the story too much, but it was kind of implied through some of the dialogue and things that were happening in the first issue. Altogether, like I said, I'm not really big into like the vampire stuff, anything like that, but I gotta say, like, I went ahead and added this to my pull list because I read the first issue and I was like, ooh, wow, I do like this story. I do like the art as well, kind of matches it. And I believe it was in issue number 2, there was some really great scenes that, like, it really kind of reminded me, say, of like Die Hard meets a vampire flick. It was really cool, and I've liked the story that is going on in Vampire State Building. That is issue number 3. I think you guys should go check that out, especially if you're into vampires and horror stories. One that you might want to go check out. The next one here is going to be on Red 5 Comics, and this is the Dark Age issue number 5. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to be an ongoing series or if it's just going to be a little mini series, but this is issue number 5, and there is obviously going to be an issue number 6. By the way, this one ends. This one ends. Now, this book was created and written by Don Handfield, art by Leonard Rodriguez, colors by Dijo Lima, and letters by DC Hopkins, cover art by Nicholas Ellie. And I'll go ahead and show you this inside cover here. You pay particular attention there. I'm not sure if you can see all those names very well, but they actually, it looks like they went and got a hold of some doctors at some different universities and things to put in a little bit of research about how life would go in this the premise of what the story is. So what's going on in the Dark Age is basically all the metal in the world disappeared, and a lot of technology really relies on metals and things like that. So all the metal in the world had disappeared, and basically we hit fallout in the world, as we're basically back to the Dark Ages. Now, this book makes a lot of references to things like Star Wars and just stuff like that. I didn't show you any of the art, and we're basically following this one man and his family as they are going through and trying to survive in the world. Now, this particular man was, I believe he was a doctor in, maybe not necessarily archaeology. And it may have been archaeology, anthropology. They talked to some of these different people in here. Medieval studies. They got different people they talked to and consulted on here. But basically, he was a professor at a university, and what he did was he talked a lot about, like, primitive weapons and things like that. And he was being sought out by this one faction of people who were there trying to survive, that came to him to ask them for him to make them weapons, because he basically, he knows his stuff. You know what I mean? He's very good at this, and he began making weapons. He's apparently the man who can make the sharpest blades in the world. And what we find is he was actually making weapons out of things like old toilet seats, not toilet seats, but like the tops of toilets, just toilet bowls and things like that, because the porcelain could really be used to make some very sharp objects. But we see there are other people with weapons, and kind of what's going on here is, the world is in fallout, but there are people out there who are cannibals out there in the world, and they have basically taken over a lot of the cities, and they are in this one particular city. Well, this guy, his daughter has an ongoing health issue that she needs medicine for, and he needs to go get medicine. And he needs to get in this town. Well, these people that want, I believe it was it a ruby or maybe a quartz, a big old chunk of quartz that they had in this town where this big clan of cannibals was at. They wanted him to go get that. So they're kind of killing two birds with one stone. And in this last issue, they had infiltrated that town. They had gotten caught captive, and here in this issue, he's sitting down with basically the leader of this cannibal civilization, and they're having some interesting dialogue. And it turns out that these two men have a little more in common with each other than they probably previously thought, and they've actually crossed paths before. I thought this issue number 5 of Dark Age was really good. Not a whole lot of action in it, but we do get a lot more of these gory scenes where these people are being cannibals, and a little bit more story filling us in here on exactly these people's histories and things like that. I thought Dark Age issue number 5 was a very, very good book. One, if you like something like, stories like that, of like a post-apocalyptic kind of story, one that's very, very good. And, the art in it's actually pretty good as well. And like I said, it gets plenty of pop culture references in there as well. Now, the next one I want to talk about here is on Stonebot Comics, but it is being published by Red 5 Comics. I'm sure there's something to that. Maybe it's like Dark Horse does with Burger Books. Maybe it's just a little small publisher, but that's Machine Girl issue number 2. Now, I do know that Machine Girl issue number 3 is coming out at comic shops this week, so this one is a few weeks old. And this is only a 4-issue miniseries. And let's see, on this one, we've got the scripts by Mats. The art is by Sergio Monges. Color by Ramon Bunge. And lettering by Alter Comics Studio. The cover is Wenjun Ping, or it could be PNG. I'll go ahead and show you those, and you'll get a little bit of a taste of the art here going on in this book. And yeah, I gotta say, and then look at that cover art once again. Just some kind of some nice art going on here. I mean, it's not the best, it's not the worst. I think it does kind of help tell this tale what's going on here. But basically, what we're finding here is this main character here, Machine Girl. I can't remember her particular name right off the top of my head. Megan. She is she's not even human. She's cybernetically enhanced. She's basically a robot, and she's there living on this planet with who she believes to be her father, who has been raising her and kind of sheltering her from the world. He's been putting blocks on internet. Certain things can't be searched and things like that. And in issue number 1, she actually we learn that she goes and gets involved in like some mixed martial arts there, and in these battle arenas, and she's pretty much unbeatable. She's a badass. She goes and pretty much beats everybody in all these competitions that she becomes a part of. And in the first issue, we see that she went to her uncle just to visit her uncle, and she found this book, this encyclopedia of the planet Earth, and she learns that, there's these like pages in there, and some of them almost look like it's got like Wikipedia links in there and things like that. It fills in some of the story about exactly who her father is and what was going on with some of these robotics and things like that he was out there developing. And here, what we find is there's the antagonists are after her to try to get some of her DNA so they can try to replicate some of that technology, is what it seems like is going on here. And in here, she ends up getting in a high-speed chase from some of these bad guys, and they do end up getting some of her DNA, and then she ends up having to confront her father about why he's sheltering her and exactly what's going on. And then while she is there at home on their homestead, they end up getting confronted by these people who are after her and her father for his technology and things like that. Again, it's only a 4-issue miniseries. Issue number 2 seemed to kind of really ramp up some of the action and things going on. I thought it was a very good book, and another one that you might enjoy. And in the first issue, you got to see some boobies. Well, kind of. But of course, that's no big deal if you ask me. Nothing. I'm not out reading these books just to. If I wanted some porn, you could just get on the internet for that, right? The next one I want to talk about here is on Cave Pictures Publishing. That's Shapes issue number 2. I recently did a review of issue number 1 here on the channel. You could go and check that out. I'll see if I can leave a card or something up here as well. But this one is being published by Cave Pictures Publishing. It's created by Rick Reckadall, written by Jason Brubaker, co-written by Rick Reckadall, pencils and inks by Jason Brubaker, colors by Jason Brubaker and Adrian Amaratifio, letters by Simon Boland, and I'll go ahead and show you those names there where you can go and check out some of that. You can see some of the art in this book as well. And this one is really good if you have kids, you have younger kids, you want to kind of get them into it, into reading comic books. This is one that's very appropriate for kids who are younger, teenager maybe, if your kids are good at reading, maybe a little bit younger. But what's going on is this character Trip. He's a gamer. This revolves around gaming. He's a gamer. His father has been missing since he was a child for a handful of years. And he's one of the best gamers there is. A lot of people know his name. They watch him play online and things like that. And what happens is on his 13th birthday, he ends up getting a gift from his mother that was actually left for him by his father. It was this ring. And this ring has some significance in this role, because what ends up happening is he kind of gets hacked while he's there playing this game. There's this somebody out there who's out there trying to steal people's information and things like that. And he has a bully in school. His bully ended up getting sucked into this video game, and he's been missing. And the kid Trip was actually questioned by the authorities. And then he ends up him and his best friend end up getting sucked into this game as well. And they have to go through and find out the mystery of what's going on with this game, because we find in the second issue that it's actually going to affect the real world. But he has the help of these different shapes that are out there. One's like numbers, one's not called pi, and things like that. And I would say the action really does begin to escalate here towards the end of the second issue, where he's in this video game world, and he does find this missing kid who is basically his bully there in high school. He ends up finding him and kind of uncovering some of the mystery of his missing father. But again, that's Shapes issue number 2 on Cave Pictures Publishing 1. Like I said, if you have kids, they might enjoy it if you want to get them into reading comic books, and it does revolve around gaming. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good title. I can't wait to read issue number 3 of Shapes. Okay, and the next one is going to be on Image Comics, and this one is going to be The Trees, Three Fates, issue number 5. This is a miniseries being published by Image Comics. The writer here is Warren Ellis. Jason Howard is the artist. D. Caniff is the color flats. And Phonographics is the letterer. I'll go ahead and show you those names right there, as well as some of the art in this book. I will show you just a little bit more here inside the book as well. Give you kind of an idea of what some of the art is like. Now, I could be mistaken, but this is the fifth in this little mini series, and I believe this is has been optioned for to become a TV show. I could be wrong. I know they've done a series called The Trees by Image Comics before. I believe it was also written by Warren Ellis as well. And this one, very weird tale. Before I go and do a fuller breakdown and review of this whole series, I'm going to have to go back and reread some of these ones as well. Now, this one, it basically takes place in what happened is one day there were these trees that just mysteriously landed out of the sky, out of nowhere, just kind of mysteriously landed. And what we learn here is our main character in the story, she was there, having and we learn this through some different flashbacks. They're having, just kind of having some discourse with her boyfriend at the time. I don't believe they were married or anything, but they were having a fight, and he ended up, he was gonna leave and everything. So he goes to leave her house. He takes off, running out the front door, grabs his jacket, and he's leaving. And all of a sudden, he's just smashed by one of these trees that ends up landing on the ground. And then since then, there's just been a whole lot of mysterious things happening throughout the city, and that's where the series actually picks up. It's kind of a murder mystery with like some alien stuff going on here, because at the in issue number 1. We learned that there was a body of somebody that had been murdered found by one of these trees. And this main character here in the story, she is a cop. She is the cop in this small town. And this small town, it's relatively small, and they really only have one way in or out. Really, the really only connection to civilization is by things being brought in by the train. And there's this particular character who pretty much controls all of that. So just some really weird things, just some different phenomena happening throughout this story as she is investigating this murder to try to get to the bottom of it. And we can see there's supernatural things going on here, or it seems like they're actually related to some of this alien technology that has to do with these trees that had mysteriously landed here. And again, like I said, I'm gonna have to go back and reread probably all of these issues, just kind of brush up on them and bring you guys a full review on them, as this series is now over. Now, the art in this book, I thought, it's not for everybody. It's kind of, it's not the best art in the world, but I think for the story that's being told in the Trees Three Fates, I actually thought it was pretty decent. No real complaints about it. But I think this last issue, it seemed like it rushed a little bit in trying to conclude the story. I almost feel like maybe they could have had a 6th issue, perhaps, to go ahead and round this story out and fill us in a little bit more. But the way it ends kind of leaves you with this. Just like this feeling of it seems like there's no real closure, but if you pay particular attention to things, you can see that maybe some of the things that she was seeing, this detective, the main character in the story, maybe all these things weren't in her head. So again, I thought it was a pretty good series. One I'll be bringing more reviews of here on the channel. Now, the next one I'm going to talk about here is on Boom Studios. And Boom Studios had one hell of a year last year in 2019. And I've got to say, they were putting out some great books. And this one is going to be Once and Future, issue number 5. This book is being written by Kieran Gillen. Dan Mora is on the arts, and Tamara Bonneville is doing the colors on this book. And I've got to tell you, Kieran Gillen has done a great job writing this book. Dan Moore's art is really good, but I've got to say, I've been kind of saying this throughout, is Tamara Bonneville's coloring scheme throughout this book and just in a lot of the work that I've seen her do is really good. I like the work that she does coloring the books that I've seen her do, and this book is no different. This is kind of where I really it really started standing out more for me. And I'll show you some of the art here in this book that you can expect to see if you haven't been reading this book, guys. You're missing out, believe me. And I know that first issue seems like it was selling out quite a bit. I'll show you a little bit more of the art there in this book. See if I can keep the glare off of there. But basically, what's going on is there is this research excavation going on. There was like a little drought in this area there in I believe it was in England. And in issue number 1, and it uncovered King Arthur's scabbard for Excalibur. Well, this scabbard is actually being sought out by this group of people for what reason we eventually find out here, but definitely by the time we'll get to issue number 5. But this scabbard actually seems to have some sort of supernatural abilities that can heal people and make them live again, or bring back the dead, bring back the dead to the living. And so, but what we see is we see the main character Duncan in this story, and kind of gets pulled into this world of hunting monsters, if you will, by way of his grandmother, who had escaped an old folks' home in order to basically drag him into this whole story and things like that. And he ends up actually dragging in this woman that he had actually been out on a date with, that he ended up having to ditch her and go to help his grandmother. Just an interesting series of events of how all these people seem to come together. And this issue number 5, once again, it kind of ramps up some of the action, as issue number 4 left off, where we see the grandmother taking Duncan and this girl to this man's house to get some more, I guess, ammunition, if you will, that they're going to need to help stop this army of undead people from coming back to Earth. As we learn that this scientist, one of the people that was after this scabbard, had resurrected King Arthur, and King Arthur is now basically he's the undead, and he controls an army of the dead. Some very interesting things going on in this book, and issue number 5 picks up there, where we see that she kind of had some. She had some intentions of her own, especially in the way that she helped raise her grandson. Just the way she raised him and things like that were kind of uncovered by this man that has been killed in issue number 4, and then in issue number 5, where it kind of picks up there. And his grandmother, he's got a feisty grandmother, and she just some of the dialogue that she has and everything is kind of funny. It might not be for everybody. There's probably people out there that say, "Oh, this screams agenda" and stuff like that. Within the confines of this story, I think it's perfectly acceptable, and some of the stuff is actually quite funny that she says here, though, albeit there is some of that kind of agenda-based stuff in there, but it's not done in a fashion where it's off-putting or anything. To me, if anything, it's really been a little more tongue-in-cheek and been very good. And we see that as Grandma is injured, basically the bad guys had knighted their Sir Galahad, and he is going after looking for Excalibur, where Duncan ends up going. They go to this particular place to ask for help, and he gets it here at the very end of the book. A book like issue number 5 was really good. Now the thing about this series is it actually started off as a mini series, and it looks like it is going to be an ongoing as of this time. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I feel like this is a story that probably could have been wrapped up in a good 6 issues or so, but they're going to keep it ongoing. I'm not sure after this first initial story arc how much longer I'm going to keep on board with this, but I have thought that this book Once and Future is really good so far. Now the next one I'm going to be talking about here is also on Boom Studios, and this is the Folklords issue number 2. This book is being written by Matt Kent. It's illustrated by Matt Smith, colored by Chris O'Halloran, and lettered by the hardworking Jim Campbell once again. And this was Folklords is created by Matt Kent and Matt Smith. I'll go ahead and show you that title page there. And you ever notice this? You ever notice how most of these books only have 1-page title pages? Nothing like those X-Men books out there. You know what I'm saying? Come on, Marvel. Yeah, I just had to bring that up here. And I'll go ahead and show you some of the art here going on in this book. Again, this is another book that I really do like the art in. I like the story that's going on here. This is a fantasy tale of this kid who, in this world where he lives in, you can see there on the cover, you can see how the kid is dressed over here, hanging out there by this rooftop. He's dressed in like a normal business suit, and you see his buddy here who is dressed just a little bit differently. Well, he lives in this medieval world. Like I said, this is a fantasy tale. And in the first issue, basically when they're graduating, when they come of age, they have to go up in front of their whole class and, just their peers and other, adults in the community and everything, and kind of say what their quest is going to be. They have to set upon a quest, basically, that's going to set up the rest of their lives as they move into adulthood. And at a party the night before, the main character here had said that he wanted to go on a quest to find the Folklords, to which basically hear a record scratch, and everybody's like, what? Well, when they're there in front of everybody at their school talking about their quests, his buddy that went up before him, this elven kid, I believe he's an elf, gets up there, and that's what he proclaims, is that he wants to go out there and seek the Folklords, and to which basically he ends up getting silenced by these librarians, or these stewards of the school, if you will. And they at that point they ended the ceremony and gave everybody else in the school their own quests, basically forcing this is your quest. Forget all the other stuff that was going on, whatever you had planned. Here's what your quest is going to be. So through all this, we get our two main characters here who decide, you know what? To hell with this. I'm not doing what they asked me to do. I'm going to go out on my quest and find these Folklords. So they end up setting off to go seek them out, and they set out on this adventure. And for one here, as they are walking through the forest, kind of learning a little bit more about each other. We learn a little bit more about his elf friend and kind of his past and how he came to be in this town. It turns out he was adopted by this family. He was actually found by what he knows as his mother and father. And then they end up bumping into this mysterious figure, and they end up getting away from this person that had looked like they probably had bad intentions, and then they go ahead and they and they move on on their quest, and they end up getting caught in this fantasy tale, something that is very familiar to a lot of people if you've ever heard any old folk tales and things out there. So old folk tales, like you get Jack and Jill who ran up the hill. You get just all these like the tale of Jack and the Beanstalk and all those different tales. This seems like it's really going to be playing on a lot of those old folk tales, and that's how this second issue ends up. Again, Folklords issue number 2 is a really good book, and the art in it is pretty good as well, especially some of the covers they've been putting out. But I think this is one, if you want like a medieval fantasy tale, Folklords might be your number, and Boom Studios, once again, doing a great job there. Now, the next ones I'm going to move into, these last few that I have to review, are on my favorite publisher of 2019, and probably my favorite small print publisher overall, and that's Vault Comics. And today I'm going to be talking about Black Stars Above, issue number 2. Now, I actually was reviewing issue number 1. I didn't know that I was going to like it. I ended up reading it and really liked it, and I went ahead and put it on my pull list. Black Stars Above is being written by Lonnie Nadler, illustrated by Jenna Cha, colored by Brad Simpson, and lettered by Hassan Atsmane El Hao. I could have mispronounced that, and I'll go ahead and show you that inside cover there, some of those names. And then you can see some of the art there as well. Let's see if I can get that without a reflection on there. Again, guys, this book is really, really good. I'll go ahead and show you a little bit more of this art here. So what's going on here is Eulalie, the young lady you can see there in the picture. Eulalie was this takes place back in like the 1800s, and this book is really excellent. For one, I got to tell you, this book, while it's not overly wordy, at times it is, at times it's not, at times it lets the art tell the story more so than just words. This comic book really, it reads like a novel, just like a book, because it gets really heavy, and things that you gotta kind of understand in the story that's being told here. It's being told from the perspective of the main character here, Eulalie, who she was living on her family farm. This is back in the 1800s, so they had trades, and they are, I believe they are in Canada, probably. I can't remember what area that they are in here exactly, but her family trade was, they were fur trappers, and she was basically told by her father, like their whole trade is basically becoming obsolete due to emerging technologies. Just companies out there who are like retail companies who are going out there and mass producing goods. Kind of something that goes on in our world now. A lot of people blame things on Walmart and stuff like that for shutting down mom and pop shops and stuff like that. We're not here to discuss that, but basically she is told by her father that she is going to marry one of her father's colleagues' sons. She's basically being set up in an arranged marriage, and she's going to teach him the ways of fur trapping and what he brings to the table as well, so they can go ahead and live and prosper, and they're going to be living there on her family farm, which she's going to be stuck there, which is something she don't want to do. She don't want to be stuck there on the family farm doing any of those kinds of things. So she ends up going to town to pick up some supplies for their household. Well, she gets there into town and ends up trying to trade and barter for some of the goods that they need. And the guy there at the local tavern, and this was all in issue number 1, told her like, hey man, like, you don't really, the goods you have aren't worth much anymore, but since you guys have been so good, we're going to give you this, but after this I really can't take anything from you. So she ends up coming across a stranger that needs this package delivered to a town that's north of them, and to get there she has to go through these woods, and these woods people get lost in, and so she goes ahead and accepts, and he gives her a down payment to get started on her quest. He gives her $200 to get started and promises her more when she's done, and she has to deliver this package package. She can't open it or anything like that. And naturally, what happens is she ends up taking this package, leaving her house. She leaves the money there on at the house for her parents to hopefully make a better life for themselves as she sets off on this quest to deliver this package. Well, she kind of ends up getting lost in this forest, and it seems like something that has probably happened to her grandfather before, just from some of the stories that he had told. And she's this issue number 2 is kind of her quest as she is lost in this forest, trying to get to this town where she needs to get to deliver this package, and some of the just supernatural things that are going on here in this story. Some really weird stuff going on here. It seems like it's not just supernatural. It seems like it's somewhat alien. Just really cool stuff going on here back in the 1800s. The art in this book really matches the story well, and I like the way Lonnie Nadler is telling the story. Again, a very good one that you guys may want to check out if you want something a little more heady and something a little supernatural as well. I thought Black Stars Above is a really, really good book. The next one I'm going to talk about is also on Vault Comics, and that is Creature Feature issue number 3. Guys, this book is really good. I like this one. It's a horror tale. It's being written and created by Elliot Rawl, illustrated by John Bivens, colored by Jerry and Monahan, and lettered by Taylor Esposito. I'll go ahead and show you those names there, along with you see a little bit of the art there. I know they had another issue. The same writer did one not too long ago called Return to Whisper that was really good. There's a little bit more of the art. This book is really good here as well. And what we find out is these creatures had landed on Earth some time ago, and they kind of look like starfish, and they end up taking over people's bodies. And then what we see is like their bodies, the people end up tearing their skin off of their bodies, and we got like skeletons running around all crazy like. And it's been really good. And what the story was set on in the first 2 issues was the guy who is here on the cover, his brother, who it seems like he is basically the caretaker of, he takes him and drops his younger brother off to stay the night with some of his friends. And they ended up going out to the local lake. They rode their bikes out there to the local lake to figure out what's going on, just to have some fun, be kids. And I think this story seems to take place in like maybe the late 70s, early 80s. And all these kids end up going missing, and that's where we learn a little bit more about these creatures and everything. Just some really weird stuff going on in this book. I like the cult classic Creature Feature. Been a really good book. The art in it seems kind of dark and really matches the tone of what they're trying to get across in this book. It really does remind me of some of those good old movies from the late 70s where they're telling these kind of creature kind of tales. Very great book. Elliot isn't it Elliot Rawl? Doing a really great job writing this book. Elliot Rawl. I could be. I'm pretty sure it's Elliot. Don't have 2 L's, but I think you get me. Guys, I've really liked Creature Feature. This book is really good, and he did do one previous, like I had mentioned, called Return to Whisper before this that was really good as well. Again, just kind of really gets that vibe out there, watching some of those old B horror flicks from like the 70s and the 80s. One I think if you're into that kind of thing, you should definitely go check out. The next one I'm going to talk about on Vault Comics is Money Shot issue number 3. Guys, Money Shot is hilarious. This book is being written by Tim Seeley and Sarah Beatty, drawn by Rebecca Isaacs, colored by Kurt Michael Russell, and lettered by Crank. And I'll go ahead and show you some of the art here if I can find something appropriate enough to show you. And I'll get into that in just a second. There's some of the art here that you can expect to see in this book, as well as even right here, the middle page there. Just some very cool stuff in this book. I like the art in this book. Now the thing is what's going on in this book is there's these group of doctors who were basically crowdfunding to get some of their projects done. They are scientists, and basically this takes place in the future. Aliens had basically come to Earth and wanted to, humans had proved themselves smart, and then the aliens got to Earth and kind of studied humankind and were like, whoa, these people are nuts. We want to have nothing to do with these people. And, they ended up taking off, and just some really funny stuff that kind of sets up the story. But these doctors, they need, they all work at this university, and they need money to continue their projects. And one of them, is this ship that they had created. I can't remember exactly what the name of this ship was. It was Money something. It was Money Ship, Money something like that. That they had the name of the ship that they wanted to use to go do some space exploration, learn more about aliens, civilization, and things like that. So they have all these doctors had this technology that they've kind of been working on, and all their funding basically got pulled. So they decided to do crowdfunding to get their projects off the ground and continue their research. And they're crowdfunding by using this spaceship that they have now dubbed Money Shot, basically because they took and spent a lot of money on the ship, and it largely has produced no actual kind of, really, it has been worth it. So these doctors set off into space to crowdfund their projects by live streaming them having sex with aliens. And here we learn a little bit more about just kind of what they've been going through as they are trying to, they end up getting captured in, I believe it was in issue 1, they end up getting captured by an alien civilization and imprisoned. And here now they're trying to get out. And just some of the things that are going on in this book are absolutely hilarious. It all revolves around sex and them having sex with aliens and stuff. If you're a Trekkie, you might be into that kind of stuff. But altogether, if you can stand some of that, it is involving a lot of sexual related narratives and things like that. But to me, I think it's really hilarious. But again, it's not for everybody. I like the art in this book, although I will say that some of these characters, just in the art, they all seem to have, some of them have similar looks, and that's something that I think I can forgive because I think the story overall is actually pretty good. But you can definitely tell the art, and it is being done by this one artist. But again, Money Shot is a hilarious title if you want to get something a little more adult oriented and don't mind some of the porn aspects of it and what they're going into. And you don't really see a whole lot of grotesque things in here relating to the sex or anything, but there is a little bit of that in there. But again, it is more for adults, and Money Shot is a book that I think is really hilarious, and I can't wait to read issue number 4 that should be coming out later this month here in January. Okay, guys, now we are almost finished here with all these comic books. I swear I told you it was a big stack. Okay, now getting into the last couple that I have here. Again, they are still on Vault Comics. This is going to be Relics of Youth, issue number 4. Now, this book is being written by Matt Nicholas and Chad Redman. Art by Skylar Patridge, colored by Vladimir Popov, and lettered by And World Design. And I'll go ahead and show you that title page there. You get a little bit of look at some of the art in this book as well. And let me see if I can find a little bit more here for you to take a look at. You can take a look at a little bit more of that art. And guys, I got to tell you, this issue number 4, I could be wrong here, but I believe this is the last issue of this. If they're going to do more, this would be the last issue of this story arc for Relics of Youth. Now, this book, I would say I like this issue number 4. I think it seemed like a pretty good resolution to what was going on in the previous 3 issues. Now, I've got to say, I'm not for sure how much I like, these 4 issue story arcs, but Vault Comics seems to have a really great way in which they present these stories in 4 issue story arcs as well. And this one actually kind of proves that, because through the first 3 issues of the story, we got an introduction to our characters. We kind of got to know who they were, what was going on, and just kind of their conflict and everything that was going on in this world. Now, in this one, we kind of, there's just like some supernatural things that have been going on where, these kids woke up one day with these tattoos that really only they could see. It kind of brought them all together, and they all set out to the Bermuda Triangle, to this island, and have kind of been dealing with a lot of the lore of the Ponce de Leon and the Fountain of Youth, and kind of how there was these family bloodlines that were there to protect the Fountain of Youth from being found by Ponce de Leon. And I'm pretty sure that they are going to have a second story arc with the Relics of Youth here, because the way issue number 4 left off, it kind of left off in this way that you're like, ooh, like some of the things that happen here in this particular issue, and then the way it ends, the last couple of pages in this book kind of like set up like, okay, like there's definitely gonna be more here, just given by the revelation that's happening here. And I gotta tell you, I'm actually pretty excited about that because Relics of Youth. When like issue number 1 came out, like I wasn't gonna read it. I seen like the cover for issue number 1. I'm like, oh man, this looks like it's probably full of a bunch of millennials and just really just weirdo things going on here. And you know, guys, I really liked it because, like I said, there's it's kind of got not really horror aspects to it, but more supernatural things in which all these kids come together to put a stop to these pirates who are out there trying to get to the Fountain of Youth and harness, you know, just any of its powers and things like that. Again, issue number 4 here, I thought was a very, I'm pretty, like I said, I'm pretty sure this is the last issue of this first story arc, because I'm sure this is going to continue on. And I think this is a great wrap up to the final, just for the final issue of the first story arc of Relics of Youth. And Vault Comics, if they do a second story arc, I think they've set up a pretty good story here going into a second story arc for this series. And I gotta tell you, like, the art in here, I think is pretty good. The coloring is decent as well. I think for me, like, I'm always willing to give a little bit in the art department as long as we're getting a good story. And I think the story set forth here in Relics of Youth, issues 1 through 4, have been very good. And I'll probably do more of a series review here on the channel very soon. But again, Relics of Youth, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was a pretty good series especially for starting off as something that I didn't think I was gonna like or want to read. But again, that's kind of Vault Comics, man. I think soon I'm gonna start something here on the channel called the Vault Challenge, in which we go out there and we're gonna put Vault to the test and see if they actually have a bad title out there that I don't like, because largely most of the ones I've read by Vault have been pretty good. Now, the last one, guys, that's right, you've made it to the end. Ding, 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 ding. I mean, what is this video? It's probably going to be nearly an hour long. The last one here on Vault Comics is The Plot, issue number 4. Guys, this book right here is phenomenal. This one is being written by Tim Daniel and Michael Morisi, drawn by Joshua Hickson, colored by Jordan Boyd, and lettered once again by the hardworking Jim Campbell. I'm telling you, if you know the name Jim Campbell, man, you know this dude, he letters like everything, man, and he does a pretty good job. And there's some of the art there. You can see the inside cover and some of those names here involved in this book. And I'm telling you guys, this book is really great. Go ahead and take a look at a little bit more of that art. Guys, this series overall, this has to be probably the last in this first arc, this first story arc of the plot. And I've got to tell you, and I could be wrong there. Maybe there's more getting ready to come out. It just says, well, it says to be continued here at the end. So I'm probably wrong there. Maybe there's going to be an issue 5 that wraps up maybe this story altogether, or at least this first story arc. But I've got to tell you guys, issue number 3 was really great. Like, man, just what they've been doing in this series has been great. It's a great horror title. The art in this book matches exactly what's going on. And in this issue, we learn a little bit more about some of our characters, which, you know, initially you would think like you want to learn a lot of that in the setup to the story and everything, but we've kind of been introduced to characters here and there throughout the story, and it's just really built upon them in a really great way. And in here we see, you know, in case you haven't been keeping up with this, what happened was this CEO of a big pharmaceutical company ended up getting brutally murdered, him and his wife. So their children ended up having to go stay with his brother back home, you know, in at their old family home that they grew up on, that seems to be haunted by these monsters. But these monsters all seem to be like family of theirs, relatives, and a lot of it seems to revolve around like this swamp area around their home, and just things going on in their house in general. And it's a great horror title, and we get introduced into actually another character in this book that we hadn't previously met, which is the mother of some of the characters here in the story, which is, you know, one of the main characters, Chase Blaine, whose brother was murdered. We actually see that his mother is still alive, and there's some very, very crazy things going on in this book. And I'm telling you guys, like, the plot is one of those books, like, again, like Vault Comics does a really great job putting out just great titles. this one is once again so well written. The characters, you're introduced to them, and like you really feel, I don't know, you feel kind of like you know them, and you feel invested in them. And it's something that a typical horror story, I kind of feel like, you get the characters, it's really largely unimportant. You're more worried about who the bad guy is, who's going around killing everybody and things like that. But here we get introduced to the characters, these main characters being the family, and then even a couple of their family friends. But you really get involved with who all of these people are. And man, I've got nothing but great things to say about the plot. And issue number 4 here definitely ups the ante. I mean, the stakes are raised here in issue number 4, getting ready to head into issue number 5, guys. This book, if you're not reading the plot, I'm telling you, this is a must read, especially if you are a horror fan. This book has it. It's got gore. It's got some mystery there. It's got just the world building going on here is really great. Like I said, Tim Daniel and Michael Morisi just doing a phenomenal job writing the plot. 1974, just absolutely great stuff. This is one book I would highly recommend that you head out to your local comic book shop and read, and I'm sure the trade paperback will be available soon enough. I can't recommend this book enough. I have nothing but great things to say about this book, let alone Vault Comics. But anyway, guys, that's all I have for this review. Like I said, it was I'm kind of behind here. I got this fat stack of comic books, and look at all these. This is all we covered here, man. Come on. I mean, there's bigger stacks out there, but it's a pretty good stack of books. And again, there should be timestamps down there where you can go check that out. But if you've made it this far in the video, hey, congratulations, man. Really great. Thank you so much for making it here. But that's all I have for this video today, folks. But let me know down in the comments below. Have you read any of these books? If so, what are your thoughts on any of these titles? That's all I have for this video today, folks. Thank you all so much for tuning in to the 2nd Street Marvel. If you're not already, please make sure you subscribe, click the little bell and all of that good stuff. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't, give it a thumbs down. It's all good. I don't take it personal. But while you're at it, make sure that you share it with a friend and invite them to come hang out with us here on the 2nd Street Marvel. You all have a very good day. Have a great rest of your week. Go out and enjoy some great indie comics like I just suggested, and we'll see you in the next video. Later.